Good evening, everyone. Everyone here in person, as well as all our wonderful Deben Dazawag online joining us. We're going to begin this evening with an opening prayer. And Councillor Art has graciously accepted to lead us in this prayer. Councillor Art.
Reflect over the past year on our business activity through our administration center. And in this process, we try as best we are able to keep that idea of an open mind and an open heart very much in the forefront. And we open up the office and the administration center to expose the activity which goes on there. And the reports that we see when we take this step to inform the community about the work that's undertaken for the betterment of everyone. It's with that in mind that we open our heart to expose ourselves in the way that we are best able, to indicate that we are wanting to be as honest and truthful as we can in the way that we do our work. And at times when we take these steps, people may still question because they're not able to see directly the paper that is produced. But we know that from the council perspective and the work that's undertaken, we do this with this intent to keep that image in mind of doing that work which is honest, so that the people can ideally put their trust and make themselves vulnerable in supporting the work of our community. So, dear Creator, we ask that you continue to guide us and watch over the steps that we take so that we can do that good work on behalf and for the benefit of our people. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Councillor Art. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, everyone here, as well as everyone online. My name is Dennis Cropper, and I am the Chief Administration Officer of Atikameksheng. The annual general meeting is such an important event of the year. It's an evening where numbers tell us a story. As Indigenous peoples, storytelling is at the core of who we are. Storytelling incorporates language that is verbal and nonverbal. Storytelling essentially carries our history, our past, and shows us the possible paths we can take into the future. And this is the purpose of tonight, to frame our collective story of 22-23, to identify our collective success, and to also acknowledge where we can improve for the future. This evening, Gimal Craig Nuchtai will provide his report, followed by our new Chief Executive Officer, Tammy Manitowabi. We have a special presentation regarding a huge accomplishment that we made this past year. And then the main event, our financial storytellers, Tony and Isaac, they're from FCR, and they'll walk us through the audit presentation. I know that you'll have questions, both in person and those online. I'll be moderating this session. During our Q&A period, we will try to answer as many possible questions as we can. But if we're unable to answer your questions here tonight, we'll be putting together a written report of all the questions posed and all the answers given, as well as answers that need to be followed up on. And you should see that within the next 2 weeks following this evening. And finally, we'll wrap up with the fun stuff, the draws. So rules are, you do have to be Dibin Dazawag to enter the draws. Everyone online, you have been entered. Ashley and Sierra are taking care of that. If you're not from around here, we'll make sure that the prizes get to you in the mail. So I would like to introduce the team here. Gamal Craig Nuchtai, our CEO, Tammy Manitowabi, Councillor Harvey Patatagoose, Councillor Jennifer Patatagoose, Councillor Art Patatagoose, Councillor Leslie McNeil, and Councillor Vance Nuchtai has sent his regrets for this evening. To my right is my administrative team here. The Acting Director of Education, Jessica Seltzer, our Director of Lands and Economic Development, Curtis Assens, our Director of Infrastructure and Housing, Gary Naponce, our Director of Finance, Teresa Migwans, our Acting Director of Social Services, Rachel Pattison, our Director of Resource Development, Michelle Toulouse, and our Acting Director of Health and Community Wellness, Deborah Dumontel. So with that, we're going to move right along here, and I'm going to welcome up Gima Craig Nuchtai. Welcome, Gima.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you to everyone for coming out to join us tonight for our AGM for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Thank you for those coming in person and for those of you online. Like Dennis said, this is an evening where we tell the story of the previous fiscal year, which is starts April 1st for this fiscal year. Anyways, this past one, it was April 1st. 2022 and ended in March 31st, 2023. And so tonight, I'll be presenting a very high-level report on behalf of myself and council of the work we've done over that fiscal year, and then we'll hand it over to our CEO. So Ani Boujou, on behalf of Gamal and Council, I just wanted to read to you our high-level report. For those of you that are here in person, it's on page 4, and I'll just be going over that. And then for those of you online, if you do have a copy, again, page 4. If not, we'll post a report online as well. So here's a general report on our activities under 5 pillars of action under our sovereignty exercise. And the sovereignty exercise is something that council and myself, we've been working on since our term started in 2020. It's based on the 205 strategies in our comprehensive community plan. And so what we've done is we've created these 5 pillars of action to capture those 205 strategies. And so now we've categorized those into these 5 pillars. And our first one that I'll speak to tonight is about our Chinaknagewin, our constitution. And so over the last fiscal year, there's a number of activities that were identified in the Chinaknagewin. So it was ratified July 24th in 2015. And there were some follow-up items in there to address. One was the appeals and redress policy. We completed that just recently. And so now we still have work to do on that Chinaknagewin. There's many laws that we have to develop. And so under our governance and special projects program, we started law development in the cannabis law. So we had the cannabis law ratification that was approved. Next steps in that was to work on the Cannabis Law Commission. So we asked for a call out, and we didn't receive any interested persons willing to sit on that commission from our Dibin Dogswad. So now it's up to that responsibility now falls on council. So we're now working on those regulations that this commission would follow. Also, we've been working on for, seems like forever now, a governance policy. Basically, it's a manual that our leadership would follow at the beginning of their term and throughout their term. And so we wanted to put something together because right now there's a number of policies that are strewn about in various sections of the administrative policies, and then there's some standalone policies that govern our leadership. So we wanted to put that together in one manual. So we've been working on that for a while now, and I'm hoping we can finish this off in this fiscal year. Over the last, I would say, 18 months, myself and council, we've been working with various justice professionals in the Atikameksheng area, including Justice Jenny Rastul Malazzi. And one of the initiatives there is creating an Indigenous Peoples Court here in the Sudbury area. And so that was supposed to have started earlier this year, but it took a lot of planning, and collaborating with our leadership here, as well as our restorative justice program led by Millie McCumber. So a lot of that work, that foundational work, we've taken that on now, and we're hoping that we can officially announce the launch of this Indigenous Peoples Court in the Sudbury area. In terms of our restorative justice program, council's been supporting the restorative justice program in building a local restorative justice committee. And so once we have this program ready, we would have our own committee to operate these restorative justice circles in our community. And we have several partners in the Atikameksheng area, as well as the North Shore and Wabnung tribal areas. And so we're working with communities along the North Shore and the 69 corridor on this initiative as well. And that's really what we focused on in our constitution, the first pillar. The second pillar is our community well-being. So over the last, I would say, year and a half, we've been working on finding a way to determine the state of our community members, our Dibindogzwad, both on and off reserve. And so we commissioned a community well-being survey, and we had 120 of our Dibindogzwad participate in this dreadfully long survey, over 100 questions. And so we thank you for that, for doing that work. And so we've just received a final draft of this report, and Tammy and I are actually working on this tomorrow to finalize that draft. And basically, it's going to create a set of indices to benchmark where we're at in terms of the health of our community and their well-being. So it basically mirrors the Canadian Well-Being Index, but we've also added some of our own indices in there, including life satisfaction, basic, life principles and things like that. So there's a unique Atikameksheng spin to this. We've also been working diligently on our comprehensive community plan. So we've been working on a lot of strategies, starting some, keeping some going, and then actually finishing some too. So we're quite happy about that. This year, Tammy and I are actually working on setting up the review and evaluation process with the community. So we're working on that actually tomorrow as well. Another big achievement was the opening of our community hub back in December of last year. So leadership and our administration working together to bring and extend our services that we offer here to our Dibindogzwad in the downtown Sudbury area and greater Sudbury area. So it's been a huge success, and the health department is now they have an expansion project going on as we speak right now. So huge success there as well. And of course, in our one of our sessions, we've taken the time now to recognize our all of our committee members, through award and acknowledgement, and also our youth athletes gone to Little NHL and the North American Indigenous Games. So again, supporting our community in that way. Our third pillar is our independence, and a big part to doing that is advancement of our legal claims, our boundary claim, our timber claim, and our the annuities claim. And basically, I think the most important claim is our boundary claim, where we're pushing to have the government of Canada and Ontario to affirm our true reservation boundaries as they're defined in the Robinson Huron Treaty. And that's a big part of our independence, because it basically reaffirms, our elders telling us this is where we've always been. And so we're at a critical point right now in that claim. Our elders are working on providing their oral testimony at an elders hearing upcoming in December, and so we're quite proud of that as well. The whole idea, though, too, of our reservation boundaries is not it's not everything. We also have to identify and work towards acknowledgement and recognition of our greater traditional territories as well. And we've undertaken some use and occupancy mapping exercises to do that, basically outlining what our elders have always said too, is our territories, go far northeast towards Temagami, northwest towards Biscuitasing, southwest to Sault Ste. Marie, Baoting, those areas, and then southeast to Killarney areas. So those are our greater traditional territories, and we need to get those affirmed and acknowledged as well. Our fourth pillar is our Atikameksheng economy. And I'm quite happy to announce, we have our own ACDEV corporation now, Giyak Dogmakwe, GMS for short. And, this was 20 plus years in the making. Previous leadership have always been working on this, creating an economic vehicle that will be a source of generating wealth for the community. And so November of last year, they became incorporated. And then we picked our board of directors in June of this year, and we just hired our CEO in August of this year. So now GMS is operating quite on a regular basis. They're just actually last week, council now handed the responsibility of managing our joint ventures and other business relationships over to our ACDEV Corp. So we're moving ahead with that as well. And you'll see too some notes on what have we received in terms of revenues as well a little bit later on. We've also formed a joint venture company with Sagamuk, Anishnawbek, Wanapate First Nation, and a local mining company called Technica Group Inc. So it's a four-way partnership, and since we've started discussions, we've done very well. We're in a very strong position to capitalize on a new valet project, which will start next year. So basically, we're being sole source a number of contracts under this mining project, but that's not the only one. Our partner Technica, they've agreed to retroactively provide us with revenues based on projects that they were involved in even before our joint venture was finalized. So there's a lot of good movement there as well. Our negotiation team, they're actively in negotiations with KGHM on Victoria Mine. So that'll be another source of revenue for the community by way of royalties and also procurement opportunities for our band member businesses, as well as our band owned businesses as well. We've also started late last year, discussions with, at first it was Five Nations Energy Inc. But now, 8 First Nations along the North Shore, including Wanapate, Atikameksheng, Sagamuk, Serpent River, Thessalon, Mississauga, Garden River, and Batchewana. We formed a new joint venture company, that will work with Hydro One on 2 new transmission lines that will start construction or start design next year. And so our new joint venture company will be working with Hydro One on those projects. Hopefully, the announcement will happen in the next few weeks from the Minister of Energy on basically confirming our involvement in those projects. And of course, our business park, we've handed over the management of the business park to GMS, and so they're actively pursuing dollars to work on finishing phases 2 and 3. So council has provided that guidance to GMS and to staff to continue that work as well. And we've also started work on researching the development of a bank here in Atikameksheng. This bank, at first, we haven't really defined what this bank would do, but initial discussions was about how can we finance our own major capital projects in the community. Rather than borrowing money from a bank, why can't we borrow from our own bank and pay ourselves? So we've been researching that for the last year. Our last pillar is regarding relationship building. And so we've been working with Sagamuk and Anishnawbek. We have a relationship accord with them, so we've been working with them on some economic development projects. Also in ceremony as well. We started very preliminary discussions with Wanapate back the previous fiscal year, but we've been continuing those over the last year, and we've been planning to have a formal council meeting in the near future as well. We've also been advancing our relationship with the city of Greater Sudbury, more recently with the new mayor, Paul Lefebvre. We were very happy to be invited to their inauguration. We had Councillor Art and I think it was Jadaki Drum Group sing some songs at their inauguration. So it was the first time in the city history that we participated in their inauguration. So we're making headways there as well. And of course, in terms of the Robinson Huron Treaty, we're actively involved in the Walwinde Magawan initiatives. So basically this organization is a treaty-based organization as opposed to political territorial organization. This is more about Robinson Huron Treaty, very specific, and we've since been working on creating that organization, and now we'll be working on the structure of how this organization would be managed. So on behalf of council, I wanted to make sure too, we announced, like, council's been active in their portfolios. They've been very active in their committees, to the point where we've kind of had to slow down, but I just want to commend council too on their commitment to their respective committees. They too have been working on a lot of strategies, and I think you'll see in the report their collaborative efforts with administration and working on various strategies and reports and other initiatives for the community. So I wanted to recognize council's work as well. And with that, I just want to say again, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you much.
All right, so I would like to introduce our CEO, Tammy Manitowabi. Tammy, if you can come up.
Ani Bojo Kinawea. Gijgando Kwedesh Nakas Kamokaton Jaba, Migwamumpi, Tikmashing, Anishnawbek, Naki. So my name's Tammy Manitobi. I'm the CEO here for Segmuk. That's the second time I've made that mistake. For Atikameksheng and Anishnawbek. So my report is not going to be as extensive as Gima's, but just to let you know, I will be working alongside Gima on all of these different initiatives. So I just wanted to let everybody know that the office of the CEO did experience some challenges over the last fiscal year with respect to restructuring, and we have a CFO, which is Paula Robinson, and we have a chief administrative officer, which is Dennis. So it is to better streamline the operations. And so the CEO, the main function of that is to be able to work very closely with GIMA and council and be that that arm between governance and administration. And so our CFO is responsible for handling all of the high-level financial information and management and administration. And our chief administrative officer, Dennis, handles all the administrative programs and services. And we're looking at all of the different strategies as well, and looking at program evaluation. So there has been a lot of work that was done last year. I just started in February, so like just at the end of the fiscal year. So part of my duties when I came on board was to review where we're at with things. And I looked at the comprehensive community plan. I looked at reports, annual reports, budgets, audited financial statements. I reviewed council minutes, council resolutions, and looked at some of the decisions that have come from and directives from chief and council. One of the other things that that I did when I first came on board was look at all of the different strategies and things like the community health plan or the wellness plan, mental health and addictions, wellness emergency response plan, and looked at some of the departmental work plans just to get an idea what everybody is responsible for. And we have a great team here, but I'm not going to steal Dennis's thunder, but he'll do that. So one of the things that I was really proud to find out when I came on board is the very hard work that this team does, and especially through COVID. And we have a very special presentation to make tonight, and it's very hard to get that because I've done that for another First Nation. I know how much work it is involved with getting this certification, and it's quite extensive. And when we look at administration, the foundation of any organization is not only the strategic plans, but it's also all the policies, the procedures, the laws, the constitutions. These are the foundations of any organization, and I'm so proud to be part of it. Miigwech. Yeah. Okay.
Miigwech. All right, as Tammy alluded to, we have a special presentation. So before I bring up Catherine, I just want to make mention to what Tammy was speaking, is that I have the opportunity to work with such a great team. It takes a lot of people to provide the programs and services that Atikameksheng is able to do day to day. And all the people to the right of me, and some people that are not able to be here, we have people in acting capacities, really have dedicated their lives to providing quality programming and services because our people deserve it. And every day I walk into work, I appreciate what these people do day in and day out. And so today we're going to focus on one accomplishment of many that the finance department was able to work through and achieve. So I would like to bring up Catherine Dubosky. Please come on up.
Right. They didn't tell me how much time I have, so better get comfortable. I'm just kidding. Okay, let me, first of all. Going to share my screen. Oh. And I didn't ask if I have screen sharing ability. I guess I'll find out.
You did.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. There it comes. Let's move this and we'll take a look at slideshow from the beginning. All right. So I'm so, I have to tell you, Atikameksheng has a special place in my heart. So I'm from Chaging First Nation, of course, down the highway. And I've lived in the Ottawa Valley since my dad returned from Germany, where I happened to be born. So I was a brown baby amongst a sea of blue-eyed blondes. But so I've been running up and down this highway a long time, and then moved to Sudbury in 1997 and raised my children there. And so I have lots of memories coming out here, swimming in the waters, coming to the powwows around, and living in Sudbury, connecting with the First Nations and all the people around. I'm sure there's 20 First Nations within a few hour drive, right? So we're very lucky that way that we get to visit and intermingle and get to know each other. So Atikameksheng has a special place in my heart. It always has, because of those connections. And I just want to acknowledge it's very meaningful for me to be here with you. It's meaningful every time I drive in and gas up. It's meaningful every time I'm welcomed into the administration office, because this is purposeful, intentional work from the heart. And I'm just very blessed to be able to work alongside our First Nations across Ontario for me, but across the country with FMB. So wanted to share a little bit of highlights I put together of this journey, this financial management journey that Atikameksheng began. And when I let me just move my screen here. When I was invited to come, a few words came to mind right away when I was thinking about what can I possibly say? How can I encapsulate what we've been along? Because COVID and the pandemic was hard on all of us. We've had to do things we've never had to do before. We had to lean on each other in ways we've never had to before. And that was a shared experience that we'll never forget. We carry it with us. We try to look at what were the lessons in there. And I think the lessons were to really focus on people. People are everything. People are what makes a nation. People are what makes our lives meaningful. We do these things in process and other things, but they come to life with people, with the people behind it and the efforts that people put in. So some of these things, respect and vision, values, those were evident when I first started to engage with the Atikameksheng in this financial management journey. There was a journey of putting financial governance in place. It was already working upon, it was already being built. There were a lot of good things already in place. We were only focusing on the gaps to really enhance it, to bring it to another level. So we had that goal in mind. We had a work plan in mind. we had to adjust and make maneuvers and things along the way because something like a pandemic kind of put a monkey wrench into our work plan. A lot of the work we do in that building that financial capacity is supposed to be in the community. We're supposed to sit beside each other and support each other that way. My role is to provide some guidance. It's an opportunity and a blessing to be able to just be generous, to share all of my knowledge that I've accumulated, but also the knowledge of the, I don't know, I think we're up to 123 people at FMB across the country. So I have a collective team that I bring. I can tap into that knowledge source and bring that generously to the nations I work with. So we had that capacity building in mind, but because of that pandemic, it made us really dig in deep and look at the commitment that change would have to change in our plan, change in how we're going to go about it. So we faced those challenges. We did those together, and I really want to commend Atikameksheng putting finance staff as the champions to kind of lead the process and engage with the administrative team, community members when needed, and with council support. They really led that process and keeping us on track and keeping us, keeping the goal in mind. And the goal in mind is that we are sitting here in service of community members. We're answerable to community. We do things for community, and community members want to know the same thing. What are you doing with the money, and how are our lives getting better, right? So that's why we're here today, to share some of the stories of how that comes to be. So we sit here in encouragement of each other. We're not always perfect. There is no perfection, but we're darn good. We keep going. We keep showing up. We face those challenges, and we try to do the problem solving and work through and find solutions together. And through that, because I work with nations usually 2 to 3 years, 4 years at a time to get through this financial management system process, we develop deep friendships. So I had a lot of respect and admiration for the folks that I worked with throughout the process. And those have developed into deep friendships. So it's always going to be even more meaningful every time I drive in. But now I'm going to have, businesses I'll be looking at and other things that are going to be happening. And, the well-being of community members is just going to be evident. It's evident in how you interact with each other, how you deal with each other, how you speak to each other, how you care for each other, how you show up for each other. And I'm so excited to see all that's going to happen in the future. And so we take a moment tonight to just pause in celebration and share the success story of what has taken place. So if I could highlight a few points, the finance staff, like I said, championed that process. They got everyone involved that they needed to, and we try to do it in a methodical way so that it wasn't disruptive to your workflows. This is a professional, high capacity team. It was always very professional, very responsive to phone calls and emails and jumping on Zoom and all that Zoom fatigue that we had. And we were enhancing a solid foundation that was already in place. So I want to make sure I acknowledge that. Consistent bi-weekly meetings. We had every Tuesday morning, I think it was, every 2 weeks. And then towards the end, it was every week. And then right before, it was almost every day. I have to tell you, it is a dedicated process to get through it. It is attainable. It's attainable for every First Nation in Canada to get this certification. And that's because we'll sit with you, we'll walk that journey with you. We'll tap into the resources that I need to at FMB in order to make that happen for nations across the country, because it is a step away from the Indian Act in the places that make the most impact in economic development and in social well-being. We have to take that control ourselves. And it might be a little scary, but we're going to do it together. And that's the difference. And I'm so happy to hear about the partnerships and the nations gathering together and working together, because that is what it's going to take. We have our collective best interests at heart, and we'll put our collective minds together and look at the creative ways to make sure those things happen. So they remain focused on that certification for the nation, and the what FMB has done some research. So First Nations that have attained this FMS certification have seen a 40% increase in overall well-being because of economic development opportunities, because of everybody's involved, and it's a shared vision toward a better future. So I just wanted to point that out. Here's a timeline of some of the things. So from 2015 to 2023 in January, the review actually happened in November, but it does take that while. And you have to understand there is a pandemic thrown in there. We had to readjust and keep going. And that is the dedication of this administrative team along with support. This is just a snapshot of about 75 documents initially. I was talking with another director of finance at another nation, and she says, I'll do another audit throughout the year anytime compared to what going through FMS was like, because it is documentation. You are showing that you are actually following your own financial administration law. FMB is not an enforcement body. This is Atikameksheng law, Atikameksheng policies, Atikameksheng procedures, Atikameksheng behaviors and practices in how you engage with community, how you have budgets in place, how you have approval process in place, how there's minutes documenting things that you're doing, how committees are formed and to have terms of reference. So this is just a snapshot. This is my gift to Teresa for how to keep the nation on track. So she could, every year she's going to pull this out. Oh yeah, we do that, we do that, we do that. And if you ever need help, I'm right there to come back, and I'd love to assist in any way that I can. But this is just a snapshot of some of the things. So the annual planning, that one that's right in the middle there, integrated planning session. And that's where all those key planning documents, your risk management, your capital plan, what is our infrastructure plan? How does that impact our finances? What's our financial plan? Those strategic goals and priorities that Gamal was talking about, those are in there. And you review them on a regular basis. You keep them alive and moving, because that's what's going to be your guiding light, so to speak, to get through that fiscal year. But we're not doing the 1 year at a time anymore. That stop and start 1 year. We're doing multi-year planning at a time. So things that take several years, like business development and those kinds of projects, or infrastructure, capital projects and buildings and all of those things, they take several years. Maybe you want a school, maybe you'll need, maybe you want a pool on Atikameksheng, maybe you want a whole community center. I don't know. The sky's the limit, but knowing that you have these processes in place, they will grow as Atikameksheng grows, because you're going to do these, every day a little bit more, better and better, 1 year over the next. So that also opened up the opportunity for the 10-year grant funding. So a nation that attains this financial management system certification, you have a different mechanism of funding that you can ask from ISC. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's an ISC thing and I'm not from ISC. But it does provide these types of things: more certainty, more flexibility on use of funds, consistent, reliable funding, less reporting requirements to ISC, and there's supposed to be a 2% minimum escalator each year. So we'll hold them to that, or we'll send them a bill. So some of it, I want to put you in this framework of where you are sitting now. 354 First Nations across the country are working with FMB, have opted into this Fiscal Management Act, which created Indigenous-led institutions to take those steps away from under the Indian Act, methodically, so that we do it carefully, because we have people's lives in our hands. So 270 First Nations across the country already have a financial administration law, just like Atikameksheng. 224 of those have achieved a financial performance certificate, which Atikameksheng also. And that is a look at your last 5 years financial statements and looking at calculations and ratios, and you're meeting those ratios. And that's another guiding document that finance can use. And you can ask us anytime if you want us to informally run your ratios. you're going to see that when you do quarterly reports, you're going to keep yourself on track because as you're looking at things, you know how to make adjustments throughout the year. So 224 have that certification. 61 First Nations in Canada have a financial management system certification, and Atikameksheng is one of them. I'm going to get choked up. And I want to tell you, there are only 10 in Ontario. And so I had to write them down because I want to say the names. These are nations that are standing shoulder to shoulder with you, and others are coming. Every year we do more and more. And like I said, we're there to walk that journey with them, to share what we know, what we've seen here. We'll take all these collective lessons and we'll bring them to another nation who's just waiting for the information of how do I do this, because it seems like a big thing. So Chippewas of Rama, Chippewas of the Thames, Caldwell First Nation down by Point Pelee that just got land back after 230 years of having land forcefully taken away. So kudos to them. Wazoksing, Nipissing, Sagama, Shishiguaning, Atikameksheng, Temagami, and Tequotagama. So lots and around this region. And we're going to see more and more of that because the partners that you have mentioned are going to want to be solid in their processes. Because when council doesn't have to worry about how administration is handling things, they can focus on things that only council can do. And you've delegated responsibilities to positions and people that have highly skilled, dedicated, they want to do the job the best they can. And the staff that they work with, you'll have the confidence that processes and documentations in place so that they can do their work, you do their work, community supports and has confidence that they can see things happening. They can see things being built. They can feel the energy in the nation. And yeah, it moves me to tears sometimes when I think about it. So that is what I wanted to come and share. You have a roadmap in place from your certification, the team approach. We're here as support as you need. You have strong governance in place to make those informed decisions, accountability and transparency to membership, and you're on your pathway to your own self-determination, whatever that means for Atikameksheng and Anishnawbek in the area. So I'm just so proud, of course, because you know, I see the growth and the progress. This one, I took this picture, I saw it yesterday as I was driving around, and I just want to wish people of Atikameksheng all the best for the future. And we will be watching and we will be supporting. We'll be right here along the journey. Chimigwech. Okay. Would you like to do this? We'll call up
Yeah, we're gonna go do that over there.
Cool.
All right, so Catherine is going to be presenting Atikameksheng with our financial management system certificate issued to us by FMB. So if we can have the finance team, Teresa Miguans, I think June's here as well. Sierra, you were a part of this process. Is there anybody else here? Okay. And so we're just going to take. Okay, and Paula was here. So we're just going to take 2 minutes. They're going to take some pictures over here. So everyone online, just give us 2 minutes. We're going to go take some pictures and then we're going to get back to it. And Ima and all of council want to go up? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So we're going to do it right over here. Oh, Sean. Sean's coming. Come on. Did you want one just with Catherine? Sure. Yeah. All right. All right, me, Gwetch, Catherine, and congratulations to everybody. All right, so we're moving on to the main event here. What everybody's here for, the numbers, the story. So I'm going to welcome up Tony McGregor from FCR, and he's going to run us through the audit presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. Dennis, I really appreciate the introduction and the discussion from a storytelling standpoint. Accountants aren't always known as being the most poetic of people, but I would really say that these financial statements truly do tell a story. It tells a story of where we've been, but the art of the financial statement is really where we're going. And the financial statements that we're presenting today talk about a strong First Nation, one that's very economically diverse. Catherine talked about, standing with your peers. I've always looked at Atikameksheng as being ahead of the game in so many different respects, from an economic diversity standpoint, from a perspective of pursuing different interests, right? The joint ventures that Gama talked about, those are things that First Nations now are traditionally only starting to investigate, and we're so far down the line and continuing to leverage that as we move forward. From a governance standpoint, as an auditor, I see a very mature governance position where, yes, there's still work to be done, there's still work to be developed, but again, the First Nation seems to be very far ahead of the curve and leading the way in a lot of respects. I think this is especially important as we move forward and we look at what's to come next in the future. We know that there's significant amounts of money coming in, and I think it's notable that the infrastructure is there to be able to handle that, whether that's Robinson Huron money, whether that's boundary claim money, whether that's just economic development opportunities that come forward. The infrastructure is in place, the teams are in place, and there's a lot of experience on those management teams. That means that as a member, you can come away with a lot of confidence in understanding what's happening with the organization and what's happening on your behalf and for your benefit. So it's not too often we're alluded to as the main event, but Certainly, we'll be going through the financial statements today. We keep it at a high level at the AGM. We kind of bring you back those highlights. Here's the important things as an auditor that I'm concerned about, or I think is very important to you. You'll have a copy of the financial statements. You get a little bit more of the detail that's there. And it's all about information transmission, right? Getting the information to you as members. So when we put the financial statements together, I think it's important to understand a couple of things. One is that these are management's financial statements. This is Guimond Council. This is the management and the administration's set of financial statements. They're the ones that are responsible for putting internal controls into place. They're the ones that are responsible for authorizing transactions, selecting accounting policies. We serve as an auditor, as an independent body, and we are really accountable to you as the members to understand, are these financial statements accurate, true representations, and can you make decisions based off of those? So we make sure that we put that, and that's front and center, that's communicated in the management responsibility statement, as well as the audit report. So this year's audit report, unqualified opinion. That means basically it's clean. The financial statements are an accurate representation and a full and true, accurate reflection of what's gone on with the First Nation. You can look at it, you can interpret the information, take that, read the story, and make your decisions based off of that. That's what you're hoping for, is that clean audit opinion. Then as the auditor, we also want to make sure that we drive home the message of who's responsible for what. So again, we go into a management responsibility paragraph, talking about fair presentation, full and correct and true embodying information here. We also go into detail of how we conduct our audit. We've got standards that we have to follow. We're guided by our national organization, and that's really allows us to issue that opinion at the end of the day. It's understanding the organization, understanding its processes, understanding the information that's being presented, and making sure it's a complete and accurate picture. That's how we get to the end of the day where we're able to issue that audit opinion. So let's go into the numbers and talk about some of the juicy stuff and what everybody is kind of always interested in it. I like to start off with a statement of operations. And so a statement of operation basically tells you where your revenues are, where your expenses are, and answers the question, what's the bottom line at the end of the day? Looking at the numbers and looking at the presentation here, what I see is a few things that jump out at me. One is total revenue this year, $19.5 million has come in. That's up from $17.7 million last year. That's an extra $1.8 million of funding, of economic development, of different areas where funds have come into the community. From an expenditure standpoint, we break our expenditures down into the different departments so that you get some insight there. This statement of operations is really meant to be kind of that summary page. Later on in the financial statements and later on in the presentation, we'll go into detail and we'll go through those departments so that you can better understand what goes there. But I think the one takeaway here is the fact that there's $19.8 million spent this year. Funding is up, spending is up. Usually in a lot of organizations, spending it up is a bad thing or is not necessarily interpreted as a good thing. In a First Nation, in a public service body, spending isn't necessarily a bad thing. It means that the funds are being mobilized and put into the community. And then it's up to the departments to make sure that they're doing it properly and doing it effectively. Certainly, we see costs increasing year over year, COVID, inflation, all of those discussions are there. Those are challenges. And the flip side to that is pushing those funders for more funding, and also making sure that we're effectively using the dollars that we do have. Also included in here is our equity pickup of $170,000 related to Begonin JS Drilling. We'll get into that in a little bit of more detail. And the other thing to talk about just is the $1.274 million adjustment in the prior period. So that's a prior period adjustment that I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as we get further into the presentation. Switching gears to the financial position report. So this is the statement of financial position. This tells you where you were as of March 31st. It talks about what your assets are, what your liabilities are, and really kind of does a bellwether test of what surplus do we have accumulated within the First Nation. Over time, I will say, and Atikameksheng is one of the is truly leading the pack, is we've seen balance sheets of First Nations continue to grow, continue to strengthen over time. And I think that's very reflective of better funding agreements, better negotiation options, and also better financial controls that are in place to make sure that funding is being utilized properly, as well as the economic opportunities that creates own source revenue and self-determination from a funding standpoint. So this year we see $19 million total assets, up $900,000 from the previous year. Cash at $12.8 million is coming in. When I look at a high cash balance like that, my question is, where is that coming from? Cash is a good thing, right? Highly mobilizable. We can put it out when we need it. Accounts receivable, same thing, $3.5 million this year, down from 4.6, meaning we've collected on our receivables. Majority of those receivables are coming from funders as well. So, from a comfort standpoint, I know I'm collecting from ISK. I know I'm collecting from CMHC. So we don't get too excited about high numbers in our accounts receivable year over year. But that $19 million, I look at that and I compare it to basically what my financial liabilities are at the end of the day. And what I see is, one of those tests that we do, one of those liquidity ratios that we're looking at are our current liabilities comparative to what our current assets are. If I close the doors, if I were forced to pay all my bills, do I still have money in my pocket at the end of the day? And so when I look at current assets of $19 million, almost all of which is liquid, is transferable, can be paid out the door, I compare that to about $7.5 million in current liabilities that would have to go out the door. That's a very strong ratio. That's a very good reflection on the organization. Accounts payable, we go through the list, $2.5 million this year. That's just your trade payables, the bills that come due at any point in time. That number will fluctuate depending on how much activity is going on at the end of the year. $5.4 million of deferred contribution. So this is funding that has come in for some purpose, some restricted purpose, that has been set aside and continues to be earmarked for future use. So deferred contribution is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It just means money needs to be mobilized in different areas. And we can go through kind of where that comes up from a little bit later. After that, we have the FNFA debt, $3.3 million. We're on schedule. We continue to pay that down. Very lucrative interest rate relative to what we see out in the news and the media today, in terms of the access to cheap debt and being able to buy or invest in long-term infrastructure at very affordable rates and continuing to have those affordable rates. So, all the discussion as to access to the FNFA money, those kinds of things certainly pays off in the long term. Long-term debt, that's your CMHC debt, those kinds of things, as well as the litigation funding that we'll get into a little bit later. So $16.6 million this year, 15.2 year over year. And really the big driver there is going to be the litigation claims that we'll talk about as we get into it. So here's just again, statement financial position, high level, $19 million total financial assets, total liabilities of 16.6. I've got net financial assets of 2.3. You will notice that it is down about $600,000 year over year. That is a little bit of a deterioration that's in there, but there's a good reason for why that's there. And there's a good reason why we don't get concerned about that change year over year. The other piece to look at here is the non-financial assets, and that's your tangible capital assets. That's the building that we're in today. That's the roads that are out there. That's the community centers, the buildings that the First Nation operates out of. It's even the hockey rink. Those kinds of things are contributing factors. Those are lasting assets that you're investing in year over year, right? Legacy items that are there. $26.8 million, almost 26.9 this year, 26.4 last year. So while there is a lot of investment going on, there's also amortization. So we haven't gone up, but we haven't necessarily gone down. And there is a big component of deferred capital contribution related to housing that is going to be making its way through as we continue into 2024. We're expecting a kind of a big boost to that number as we move forward. So I alluded to the deferred revenue area. And when I look at deferred revenue and I want to talk about deferred revenue with a community, it's really understanding where that change is and why deferred revenue comes up. Sometimes it's the funder, parachuting money in at the end of March and saying, spend this before the end of the year. And you have to come back and say, we can't, we'll do it next year, no problem. That's quite often the case. And we're seeing that more and more in different communities as funding has become available, as some of this COVID funding that has been set aside in past years has been shifted around for different purposes. The biggest ones to take away for our education. Education's deferred contribution has gone up $750,000 last year, 1.5 this year. That one is an area where we've seen more money in the education funding stream than we have historically in the past. And we've got an opportunity to kind of start to leverage that. We've got more students coming in, more tuition costs, the ability to boost supports for them. So there are plans related to these deferred contributions, but that one is one that certainly has grown. Same thing from a housing standpoint, $2.5 million last year, 1.7 this year, has gone down. We have seen spending in the housing. That's going to be from your rapid housing initiative, your renovations, your on reserve housing supplements, those kinds of things. So that money is being mobilized as it moves forward. And then the other part to talk about as we go through the notes to the financial statements is note 10, accumulated surplus. And I think this is a good one if you can understand how the First Nation operates. So overall, it's one giant entity, but within that and within the administration, we break it down into a number of different areas. And in some cases, we'll have reserve funds, right? Setting money aside for future expenditures. I always use it, the example of a house. I know I'm going to have to replace my roof in 5 years. I'm going to start setting money aside today so that by the time 5 years comes, it's not nearly as big of a bill as I feel like it's going to be. Here we see internally restricted. That means that those departments have set that money aside. The ones that I think everybody are going to be interested in are the Atikameksheng Heritage Fund, which has grown from $3.5 million last year to 4.2 this year, as well as Panage Leasing, $1.5 million last year to $920,000 this year. So those are the ones where we have different revenue sources coming in. That money is earmarked, set aside, and tracked very specifically in those areas. That adds up to the reserve section. We do have some other restricted funds, those OFNLP dollars, that's got to be tracked separately. There's accountability related to that. As well, we have areas like the boundary claim, the timber claim, the annuity claim. We separate those out, and there's a very good reason for that, is because through the negotiation process, you push to have settlement funds also include your negotiation costs. So we want to make sure we're tracking those dollars, and that's the first thing that needs to get paid back, right? Make sure that we're made whole upon any settlement in the future. So there is a prior period adjustment this year that we have picked up. That's something to kind of take in and truly understand what's going on. So there is financing related to the timber claim as well as the boundary claim. Those loans have been outstanding for a couple of years, a number of years. The timber claim since I believe 2018. The boundary claim was just drawn upon in the current year, but there have been costs that have been incurred over time. Those are interest-only loans and have added to the balance or kind of drawing on those loans. So those are picked up in this year and adjusted for previous years where they should have been on the financial statements. I think the big thing here is understanding the nature of those costs are to help with the litigation, pay for the litigation that goes along with it. We don't necessarily look at those as a negative that we're incurring legal costs and negotiation costs. We look at it as more of an investment. And we don't have to worry about payment back until settlement, because we're basically going to recoup that cost plus interest over the time and through the negotiation process. So included in the financial statements as well, note number 9, this is your long-term debt, and that's where you can see the Royal Bank timber claim and boundary claim as they have been drawn on in the past couple of years. After that, we get into a little bit more detail as we go through these financial statements. So we have segmented disclosure, and the idea of segmented disclosure is trying to provide some more information and showing how the First Nation really interprets management of the different departments, of the different programs. How do we recognize or measure whether we're doing a good job? And that's from a revenue or expense position, as well as a setup position, right? So we have different departments that are in place. We match those departments and those presentation to the different schedules of the financial statements. And so we can run through just quickly and talk about a couple of highlights here. Administration. So this is going to be Schedule 4 to your financial statements. This is where you see band support, you see human resources, you see IT, COVID expenditures, those kinds of things. It's all the back end office required to run a First Nation at the end of the day. This one, what we've done is you can see there's a huge spike in 2021 and 2022. A lot of that had to do with COVID funding, but that green means it's good, right? So that's revenue. We've seen significant influx of revenue from COVID funding from a different couple of areas here. And so those are all good takeaways from that perspective. The other nice thing that you like to see here is administrative recovery. So that middle line that says 1.4 million this year, 1.3 million last year, that's the administration charging back to all of the different programs to make sure that their costs are covered, so that we're being effectively run, we're covering the costs. But not only that, you'll see a $915,000 surplus in this program, and which is a nice contributing factor to the overall running of the organization, because that basically becomes own source revenue. And own source revenue is fully discretionary. So as opportunities come up, as needs come up, you know, emergencies, areas where we need to plug a hole, those are own source revenues serve us in the future. And the other piece to that is expenditures are very stable year over year and have been for several years. So I think that, you know, if I were to take one thing away from these financial statements, is that's kind of the gold star that you see in a First Nation, you know, that they're well run or very accountable, is that surplus that you see in that administration department. Next section, Schedule 5, that's your education department. Like I said, we're seeing more and more money come into the education department. That's a good thing as costs go up, as there are different areas that need this funding. We've seen boosts in the allowances, the supports, increased tuition costs as new students are also added to the program. So that extra funding is good and has been continually going up. So that's where you see 3.7, almost $3.8 million this year compared to $3 million last year. Again, overall, the nice thing about education funding is also it is deferrable, and there's a lot of discretion now in this program on where we can spend it. So if the students are in elementary school, we can make sure that we parachute the funds in there. As they move through the system, we have more post-secondary students. We can make sure that they're supported as time goes on. From a social services standpoint, this is going to be your Schedule 6, $3.1 million total revenue in the program this year compared to 3.4 last year. This is where you're going to find your child and family services, your family support, your band rep, those kinds of things. Again, very stable overall program and overall basically running on a break even. So any money that wasn't spent is going to be carried forward and spent in the future. Infrastructure and capital, this is Schedule 7. This is always an interesting one to talk about because this is where you see actual physical impact, right? So key projects here are the Rapid Housing Initiative, your CMHC Phase 10 as it works through. We also see costs related to the water main, the septic upgrades, machinery and equipment being added. This is the infrastructure piece, which I think is talking about those legacy items as we go on. Also under infrastructure and capital, you've got fire and water, O&M, those kinds of things, energy plan, all the band buildings. So if you want some insight from that perspective. After that, Schedule 8, this is your health department. Health is always a tricky one as the auditor because there are so many little pots of funding, and we can really feel for management in the health department because the funders are always very nitpicky on some of those dollars to dollars. But this is an area where, if I'm a member of the community, this is where I'm going to see the most benefit or the most direct benefit. So we see $1.9 million of ISK money come in this year, up from 1.5. And we're seeing increased spending overall, 3.3 million compared to 2.4 the year before. That's going to be new salaries. That's going to be new programming. That's going to be travel. Travel's a cost that we're seeing rising again as COVID restrictions have been released. That's kind of what's really reflected in this year's financial statements as well. Is it's more of getting back to normal and getting back to regular operations from a management standpoint. On our Schedule 9 and 10, that's where we find our housing departments. Again, this is where there's a significant amount of deferred revenue coming into this year because there was a significant contribution related to that rapid housing funding program. We still have a good chunk of that deferred, but that's kind of in the plans, in the works, and you should actually see a lot of that activity in the last couple of months because we are presenting March 31st numbers at this point. Lands management, another program where there's a lot of little programs, a lot of different funds. This is where you have your general lands. We also got some economic development programs in here, like the complex, like the GMS, the economic development stuff. Summer students get thrown into this program as well. And this one, again, very stable, very settled year over year. Nothing really jumps out as significant or of concern. Political office, this is your Schedule 12 to the financial statements. Chief and counsel, the trust development, the director of governance, community consultation lead, strategic advisor, all those extra areas of programming come through there. And this is an area where, we talk about the maturity of the organization, the ability to invest in some areas that are non-traditional for the benefit and the long-term benefit of the members. This is where you see that carried out and the accountability that goes with that. So we do see, $900,000 of income come in. We do have some transfers in, covered off by some areas like the Heritage Fund, like other programming dollars in specific areas to cover off those expenditures. But again, all very specific areas with kind of, achievable direct positions that are in place. Claim litigation. So this is the boundary claim and the timber claim costs that have been incurred in the past year there. So in the previous year, we've got $439,000 of claims there, $1.6 million of total fees in the current year. I think the big takeaway again here is that you look at this as an investment. We're putting money out, but we know it's coming back in the long run. So we're comfortable with that. And it's just an investment in the future. And then Schedule 14, this talks about your restricted funds. So this is where you're going to find your OFNLP, your RAMA dollars, as they used to call it. This is where your mining relationship agreements, those impact benefit agreements are in place. And also the Penage Lake leasing and those kinds of things. So we've got $2.4 million that are in here. $2.8 million has gone out to different programs in different areas. Over expended, we've actually pulled back a little bit overall of 410 in this year. But I think it is important to understand that this money is all being tracked and it's all going to the benefit of the membership to make up shortfalls in areas where there isn't, say, a funding, or there isn't an opportunity, or there is an opportunity to move forward, but we haven't negotiated the funding yet in place, right? But we know that there's a need, which, is really what the benefit of having these own source revenues are and why they're so important to the community. So where we saw money spent from that restricted fund this year, it's going to be your water and sanitation. It's going to be your traditional way of life and cultural supports. It is supporting some of the governance programs as well. Whether it's council initiatives, whether it's that strategic advisor or the governance piece. But that's where those funds are going. The other piece is the unspent money gets stuck in that restricted fund to be developed and used in the future. And then a common question that we get is related to the joint ventures and the partnerships, just understanding what's going on there. We talked about that a little bit earlier in Gama's update as well. The financial statements, make sure we reflect these as well. So Begone and JS Drilling, note 6, there's a lot of information that's disclosed related to that partnership there. That's one where there isn't necessarily cash flowing back and forth between the First Nation and the joint venture at this point in time, but what we are doing is picking up our economic interest in that organization. And so that's where you see the $270,000 add on the statement of operations this year. Eshka Nebish Day Inc. That one is reported under Schedule 14. That one is more of a cash flow income for year over year. The OTE lease, that's going to be picked up on your Schedule 11. And we see money coming in there, $312,000 in the current year. The most of it was then transferred over to that heritage fund and set aside in that perspective. And then we do have the new Technica joint venture as Gima also brought forward. That's one where you'll see more disclosure going forward as that agreement gets put into place and that relationship is more formalized as it moves forward. And so that's really it. I know there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of story there, but I think, you know, the key takeaways for me is that year over year, we've seen good financial management and accountability back to the members, right? We're not running huge deficits. We're not running, expenditures that aren't otherwise planned for. And I think that speaks volume to the management structure and style that's in place at this First Nation. It's not as common to see in other First Nations when you compare that. And that's where I talk about the maturity of the organization from that perspective. So top marks from that perspective. And that's really it for me. I know we got Q&A on the next part. I don't know if we want to open the floor now because I usually take some of that heat. So
Yeah. So yeah, if we want to start with those specific financial questions that Tony can answer for you, that we'll start there. Jeannie. So where are
So they'll be in Schedule 7. Yeah.
Could you reiterate?
Yeah, sorry, the question is, where are the business park revenues reported in the financial statements? Yeah, so I'm just repeating for the people at home, so.
So there are a number of questions, and I take advantage because it's appointed as a monitor. So there are organizations, there's numerous publications. So I went through actually it was the six affidavits from Scott Hill. This is public information. I'm not talking about something that's confidential. But he says that they were paying 11,000. I don't know what the odd number is, but they did 898, maybe something like that. And they were paying that once a month. So they were here for a little over 2 years. But I think there should have like 200,000 and represents money. The other is there's no reference to apparently a sub landlord was created called Whitefish.
A sub-landlord. This is from the affidavit from Scott Hill. He's talking about specifically Atikameksheng. Where is that reference? That landlord, sub-landlord called Whitefish. The reason why I've been bringing this up the last 2 years, okay? I worked on the project, so I put a lot of work, dedication, and commitment. I worked with FedNor, I worked with the Indigenous Services Canada. I had to convince them to remove us. We had been blacklisted, and I had to convince them. So, like, I feel really bad because we're the beneficiaries of this business park. The community voted to accept that we designate that land. But like now you've got this new company called EER. To me, that's kind of, why would you pick such a long name when you go and write a check to pay these people? Like, we need lots of room. But anyway, when they were created, like, what is their purpose? But we only have 2 voting seats, whereas non-native people have 3. Who disenfranchised us? I feel the land has been stolen from us. I'll just say it like that. And so there are a number of issues here. It's really at a point, maybe community members, I shouldn't have to say this, but who's the bad lawyer? And with the bad, because to me, enough doesn't matter. We have parents here doing, raising money to put their kids through hockey. But I always thought, when we voted in favor of having a business park, that our people, our community would benefit. And I don't see any benefits. And I've been the last 2 years, so this is my 3rd time coming here. And I really feel I shouldn't even have to be standing here. We should be following procedures, processes that we agreed to through different agreements, contribution agreements that we signed, and to be respectful to our partners. And so, like, Whitefish, so am I to assume our money is in an offshore account where there are no sanctions? Is that why we went with English terminology, Whitefish, when it's Chishingwa Business Park? And now we've got this other corporation that's gonna run the business park. But where's our voice in this process? We only have 2 seats. We're already minority. Like, this is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And it needs to be fixed. And I know the money is not really talked about in the report. There's reference to Shingwa Business Park. And why did we, what's happened to that? Where's Shingwa Business Park? Where is it? Who is the president? Who is the business park manager? Now, this other company advertised for a business park or a manager, and starting salary was $165,000 because this position was advertised, and that's what the starting salary was. And I thought, but who's paying for that? Anyway, those are my questions.
Atikameksheng. So just so you know, any questions tonight, Ashley and Sierra are going to be capturing them. So that if you're not effectively able to give a full answer tonight, we are going to make sure that we're going to follow up after this with a more robust and well-defined answer. I'm going to turn some of this over to Jamal, just because I myself am limited to my even knowledge about the specific information that we're referring to. So thank you for bringing it. Jamal, I want you to just address some of these, because I think you do have some plans to address some of those changes.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. The first question was where the financials for the Streetwalk Business Park. Probably the rent figures, well, that's also, it's actually. It was already or figured. And so that would have to run up to where certain other managers as well. And I had stated last year at the AGM that we were going to have a separate session for that. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all those schedules ready, but we have draft schedules now that we're ready to review. So we're ready to review our new CFO and our we also have a benefit for our finance and audit committee, so they have a chance to review the measure. And once that's done, we want to present it to the community, which includes the revenue generated from Magonin, from Atikameksheng, from Chijingwa, and from the new joint venture EDLP. And so we have those draft statements right now, so we just have to vet that through the finance and audit committee and plus our new executive leadership and administration on. So I apologize for that. I had hoped that we were going to have that information presented sooner, but we just couldn't get the reports done in time. But now we do have the draft reports. I think all of the numbers have been accounted, and now we just have to vet that through our finance and audit committee. And then speaking with Dennis earlier today, we're looking at November presentation on the figures. So that's the answer to that first question. Now the second question that I heard was why do we only have 2 band members on the active board? Jeremy Benum, who's also on our economic development committee, and Kevin Greer, who also was on 2 other committees. So those are 2 band member representatives. So we wanted to make sure we had at least 2, but we wanted to make sure too we also had diversity on the board, where we had individuals who are very skilled and knowledgeable in business. So we do have a diverse board, and they are all blatant and experienced in economic development, other First Nations. So council, in working with our economic development department and our consultant that we hired, we agreed it was best. We had a board consisting of 5 with at least 2 band members. This is on there. So that's the current structure of our board. So they've been in operation now for at least 6-7 months, and we're quite happy with the movement, the work that they've done so far. They've been given a strict mandate from council. That was this was a process we undertook over the last 3 years to prepare that mandate in conjunction with our membership, with our comprehensive community plan. And also, like I was saying, Jeremy Benani is also on the economic development committee, so he's very attuned with the economic development plan. Myself and Tammy, we're very active with both the CEO and the board chairperson. We're working on communication documents. We're working on the letter of expectations of what we expect out of the board. And again, we're quite happy with the work that they're doing since they've been active, and they're one of our chairperson of the board is Amy DiMaggio, who's been working in economic development in First Nation communities in the role of a funder. So he has so many contacts, and he's been helping us get funding. You know, just an example, we're talking, your next question is about who's paying for salary. Well, they're actually getting funding to help pay for salary. So that's part of the board's role, is to find other monies so that we're not paying on pocket. So we're councils, myself, are quite happy with the board that has been chosen. We've been advancing GMS forward. GMS is quite active in our new joint ventures, and we're meeting them. So even though we only have the 2 band members on the board, they've been representing the commission very well, advancing our interests, our economic interests very well as well. And we've made it very clear to them that it's not just about money, but it's about how we interact with our partners, how we remain stewards of the land, and how they are to represent us. And at any table they sit at it. So, like I said, I think we have a strong board, and we are doing quite well. Just a special note too. Our CFO has been working with them to get the active corporation going. So we do have that linkage there, where although they are the economic arm now, technician, there's still a lot of linkage between the political office and the administrative office. But again, the reason why they're created is to generate revenues for beneficiaries, and they've just started. So, like any other startup corporation, there's going to be expenses at the beginning, but we know with a considerable amount of opportunities in the area, they will be generating long-term revenues for beneficiaries. They're off to a good start. The third question is, who's paying for the GMS CEO salary? $165,000. We wanted to get a CEO that we knew would be able to meet the demands of not just the mining industry, but the forestry industry, the energy industry, real estate, you name it. Every industry that is operating in our territory, we wanted somebody who's knowledgeable in those areas and can carry the active corporation and the ticket machine at every one of those tables and convey our interests, assert our rights. And we need somebody, and we need to spend money for qualified people. We want someone who's going to be here for a long term. So we selected Adam McInerney, and he's not only in economic development, but he's also worked for mining companies. So he knows. He's also a lawyer, so he knows nuances of agreements, and those types of relationships. So I feel we have a strong CEO. Now he's responsible for right now, Chishimwa Business Park, and working in with our three partners. He's doing that. He's doing a good job. Mind you, he's got very limited staff right now, but he's going to be recruiting for more staff. If they have an office downtown. So the technician is paying for this to start. But like I said, we're in the process of securing funding from, I can't remember if it's from the province or from Fedmore, but we're in the process of securing $300,000 for his salary over 3 years. So that's part of his job, to find money to help offset these costs. And we've made it very clear to GMS, yes, you are an attending economic vehicle, but the monies we give to you from beneficiary monies, you have to pay it back. So they're not getting a free ride. So if we're supporting them with money to start up, they have to pay that back. So not only are they going to generate revenues, but they're going to be paying back with the council has approved to get them going. So they're not getting a free ride on it. So that's part of business though. You need to invest in the business to get it started. And they are tasked with finding as much funding as possible and advancing our participation in these joint ventures. So a lot of the three joint ventures that we have, we don't have any capital or equipment in them. Right now, they're in the process of applying for, I think, about $2 million worth of equipment, where we'll be generating $40,000 in equipment rentals. So you can see, like, that's why I'm saying they're doing a great job already, along with our administration here as well. And administration here is to support them while they get their feet on the ground, and family and Curtis and their team have been supporting them. So yes, it's going to cost money to get this going, but like I said, they are going to pay this back. Council has made that case. Yeah.
Any question? So just to remind everyone who came on and say we are going to have a specific session about this. And now that maybe part of the day to have some time to review, really will dig deep. It will be at the end of November, but no later than the first week of December. Yes, I just yeah, it's part of the meeting and gives us an opportunity to ask questions. I guess one question I have then, so OTE paid over 11,000 per month. Did they pay? If not, Atikameksheng should be on the list of accreditors. There's a process for bringing forth a claim under that whole process of between like KPMG and OTE. So OTE owes 250 million. So if they did not pay Atikameksheng for the lease for the rent of 3 lots, what are you doing? You know, like to make sure that the money is collected. And because like all those assets are probably going to be frozen, and so all of this is taking place. There was a deadline of June 28th, but I know that Atikameksheng is listed as having lease land, so that's why I'm asking. So where is the money that they pay monthly?
Sorry, I have a question about the sublet. So It says Whitefish Lake.
No, what's the-
Oh, Whitefish. So, I have no idea what that is about, because we only have the, agreement with them, the landlord, tenant agreement with them, the lease agreement. Through Chichingwa. We wouldn't be listed under Whitefish, so I'm not even sure what that is about. That's something that we're not privy to. So I can't answer that question. The other question you asked about our lawyers, so we retained Blaney and Murray out of Toronto, so they are bankruptcy lawyers, so they're representing Atikameksheng right now. And they've let us know, like they've sent notice to OTE and KPMG, and so they are letting them know that any claim, right? Because as far as I know, OTE has paid up all of it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's why I was saying, now that we have the numbers, to be sure, we can review them and then those so if there were any though, right, we still have an opportunity, because as far as I know, the CCAA process has been extended. So there's still an opportunity for any claimants to submit their claimants, because I think the reports about it, because there were employees that were asking for time so that they could submit things. So I don't think that the process had ended, but they extended it. And I yeah, so we're actually looking at the lawyer tomorrow, and he's going to provide us with a little bit more information as to the process, make sure that however OTE proceeds over the next few months, their bankruptcy process, that Atikameksheng's rights and interests and financial interests, those are all connected. So David Allman and Ms. Ferreira are the two lawyers that are with us. So we were getting them for 2 weeks now, so we need to bring them in.
One concern about that is our traditional territory, all around our area. And we have mining companies, coming to knock on our door, asking, for them to partner with Atikameksheng. And what I find is really critical is our leadership to consult with us as community members, whether we agree to sign off on our Aboriginal title, our title to those resources that are underground. They belong to us. And I'm really afraid to go and set up an ECDF corporation that's going to act on our behalf. They don't have the authority to go and negotiate our treaty rights in terms of extinguishing title to those resources without talking to us here at Atikameksheng, to the people, because this is such an important work that's being done, and the people in the community have to agree, like leadership doesn't have the authority to do that either, like to go and sell off on our resources. Yeah, we'll sign this agreement, yes, we'll accept 250,000 a year, and without knowing what are you signing off, like, are we being dispossessed of our resources? Because if we can hang on to some of this and till we're ready, like to do development. Look what's happening in Ottawa today. There's a protest, people wanting to make sure their water is safe, their air quality, all these things. So I hope this ECDF corporation, so I guess is this corporation working with Curtis? Like what is the structure? And because, or do they have free reign? Because if that's the case, then that's very dangerous. Very dangerous. You know, like, because were they given blanket authority to do that? Art?
Entire corporation, I mean, all of the see that put in place by Toronto. Government giving mining companies permission to go and put forward claims on in blocks of land. The Supreme Court of British Columbia just ruled that it's unconstitutional for the province to make that kind of rule. This, they said that you've got to go and negotiate with the First Nation people about that inherent right. And come to agreement with them about how they're going to be compensated for giving up that interest. So there's a beneficial court case that has answered that question for us. It becomes a question of whether or not BC is going to try to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada and try to get a different result. But as it stands now, the inherent right is still protected. And we're fortunate that it is, because that's one of the questions that we're pursuing in terms of dealing with the mining company at the present time, KGHM, indicating that because we're the closest to the opening mining that they're wanting to get into production at and in, that they're having to come back to us. And this is the part that I've been speaking to about with the negotiating team. Okay? There's an interest on our part that we're having to surrender. And we have never participated in any surrender. That's very common under the Indian Act also. To get permission from the owner, which is our membership. Okay? And they're protecting their interest. Do you want to open up this mine? Do you want to sell that resource? It's having to answer those kinds of questions. And at this point in time, we don't really pursue that in terms of the way that the case went for the annuities. They just talked about a sum total of what has been generated. And you got a share in that. But we as a Atikameksheng, and this is the part where we've been somewhat quiet in terms of how we've been approaching Ontario and Canada, because of the impact that our claim is going to have on the mining industry, the forest industry. They're having to come back and settle our interest. And this is partly what my statement to the court is about, that we're going to be approaching in December. I've just been told today that roughly that's going to happen about December 13th. Go before the judge and give our testimony in court about what it is that we are having in interest in that land. Okay? And my part of my statement addresses that, and to look at when you look at that treaty, it doesn't talk about our being prevented from extending our boundaries, because it's an inherent right. If at some future time there's a need to take that step, because we have the inherent right, then we can extend the boundary of our reservation land base, because the treaty doesn't block us from taking that step. And it's so important for us to understand when we start talking about our signature on the treaty. I was having discussions with professors about this nature of inherent right that we possess in the territory where we are living. It's so far reaching. There's a story that I've been sharing, which talks about this guy Humpty Dumpty, a nursery rhyme. But over in England, the first king that was named Charles I, that man was killed because he was abusing his authority as a leader in the way that he was treating his people. His people rebelled against this kind of evil behavior on the part of the leader. And out of that came this concept of supremacy of parliament,
So I say to people right now, when we say that we are citizens of Canada, we are in part shooting ourselves in the foot, because we're in part giving up some of that inherent right that we possess because we are the indigenous people of this territory, of this space. I always say I'm Anishnawbek. I'm not a Canadian citizen. Canada has yet to do some homework about how it's going to respect and accommodate my being Anishnawbek in my own home. It wants to erase this idea of being Anishnawbek and taking your inherent right and just erasing it. And now you're going to become a Canadian citizen. That's very, very dangerous, okay, for us to be taking that kind of step and participating in the work that we're doing now. Fortunately, that court case is a very solid case at the moment. And this is the kind of advice that we've been giving to the people in British Columbia. Whenever we write something, and this is what happens. I've been writing letters to the chiefs in British Columbia about Canada. It's needing to come and make a treaty with them. That's right in the Royal Proclamation. The Royal Proclamation is still law. That was decided in Calder case in back in 1973, 1974 timeframe. So Canada has to come and ask from us to give up that inherent right. What's the compensation? And in the treaty, when you go back and read it, there's one part in there which I've been speaking about in our negotiations. Best advantage. If Canada is going to sell the resources on our behalf, it must do so and seek for us best advantage. It was on that argument that we won our claim for compound interest when we were working with Aaron Detler. If that clause was not in the treaty, we would be today gaining only 1% or whatever the number was that was declared at the time when we first went to court. When we won the appeal court, it was because they didn't include best advantage as a benefit payable to us in terms of what the resource was able to produce. So the compound interest now they're arguing about. So we've been protected and we've been fortunate to win the court case. So we're still intact in terms of that full interest. It's still up to us. It's still really up to us to decide on how that is going to be severed when in fact we make a sale. But the land remains intact in terms of title belonging to us. That's what the treaty guarantees. So that treaty is so vital for us in terms of its presence and still being there. We're not to get rid of it because it's the method used by the international community to protect, free nations, free peoples. And we haven't given that away to anyone. So there's a part of that homework there which we don't learn about in terms of our studies at school, but it's for us to protect as Anishnawbek people from Atikameksheng, and we're doing that. We're doing our best as we are able to make that come out successful for our well-being. So vital for us to do that. Oh my gosh.
Miigwech, Councillor Art. I want to give some opportunities. Oh,
I have something to add.
okay.
So Jeannie, I just wanted to say, thanks for bringing up the whitefish sublord. I'm gonna ask the lawyer to look into that tomorrow. But in addition to what Councillor Art is saying, so we haven't given the mandate or the authority to this ECDEV corporation to do any kind of negotiation. So that's the responsibility of the Director of Resource Development and the negotiation team. And council has given them that responsibility and principles that they are to follow when they enter these negotiations. And then they report back to council during milestones. And also Councillor Art and Councillor Vance are quite active in that committee. It's a very active committee, so they're the ones that are negotiating with KGHM right now. Actually, we have another member here who's involved with that. And then we're renegotiating with Valet as well. So the Valet one is a really vital one, because you're right, like there's a difference, you know, with KGHM Victoria being just outside of our reservation boundary, but with Valet being on our reservation, there's subjugation that's going on. And Councillor Art is right that, you know, just the mining permit process that they're following now, it's like anybody can go online now and say, that's my claim, right? Even if it's on asserted First Nation lands. So what I'm doing right now is creating an affidavit, and we're gonna basically either go through the boundary claim to address the subjugation that's going on, where meaning, you know, the province is basically just creating all these laws or amending all of these acts, like the Building More Mines Act. They just went and started cutting all of these requirements. So we were basically gonna have to take them to court. And so that's what I'm preparing right now, is an affidavit to do that. So I'm going back all the way to when I was employed as Director of Operations in 2009 to my current role as GMA, and we're gonna basically have to take them to court. So either it's gonna go under the boundary claim, or it's a whole new litigation altogether. But we have a very strong case, and with all of these precedents that are being set, you know, we're confident that what our goal is actually is to get the courts to order the government to work with us on creating legislation that they have to follow, where they're consulting and accommodating us where required. And even like, because, you know, they are on our land, right? There has to be even more, right? That they have to follow. Like, what if our environmental requirements are more strict than the provinces, right? So that's what we're doing right now. An example of that is in the Mackenzie Valley area in the territories. The First Nations there took the government to court there, and the courts ruled that the territory and the federal government, they had to create legislation. So out of that came the Mackenzie Valley Resource Management Act. And it has everything spelled out and how they're to consult and accommodate the First Nations, even how they are to compensate them. And so they've created this multi-agency body to basically decide and monitor all resource development activities in their area. So that's what we're going to do here too. But to answer the ECDEV company, no, they can't do any of that. The only time they get involved is once there's a negotiate or an IDA. They are then asked to step in to see how do they help fulfill those procurement opportunities through band member businesses and band owned businesses. Yeah, so that's their role. Miigwech.
We're going to turn our attention to our online Ibn Dazwag. Sean, I know we have a list of questions going. So can we start with the first one?
Yes. So our first question is, can Tony Rickman speak to the year-over-year increase under the political office other categories? Are more or new items being covered there, or what has caused that?
And who's that question from, Sean?
That's unrated,
Raymond. Tony, do you want to take
Yep.
that one?
So it's a good question. I think it's important to understand how the program schedules work. So the political office, while it's made up of chief of council, also captures a number of other smaller programs that go along with it. So when you ask a question such as this, I think it's important to understand that background. And this is probably an area where more information can be provided on the follow-up. But if you want to look at Schedule 12 of the financial statements, you get a little bit more detail than my summary slide, and you can understand a couple of takeaways. One is that the administrative recovery has gone up. Now, that's something that is usually charged to the program and is a result of additional revenues coming in. So that's the cost that's there, but it's a cost because it's a step up for new revenues. Other areas of increase are going to be your honorarium as everything has gotten busier. There's more meetings. We're out of town more often, those kinds of things as the COVID restrictions have lifted. Professional fees are up 536,000 compared to 202 last year. That's not me, the accountant. That's a lot of negotiation teams and those kinds of stuff. But when you see an increase in costs, I think you got to understand that there's an increase in revenue that offsets that. So there's a $1.9 million expense line here. There's a $996,000 expense line the previous year. But you also got to look at the $500,000 of new revenue that came in that offset those costs. And the other piece to that is there are new programs that are getting added there. So strategic advisor, economic development advisor, those kinds of things, as well as the negotiation teams are being incurred and covered off in this section.
Thank you, Tony. Can we take another one from online?
Yes. Valerie.
Valerie Riche?
Miigwech, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I want to say congratulations to the finance team on their certification. I was really happy to see this progress. Well done. And it's really nice to see everyone in the room and online, but I'll keep my question brief since we've already been on for quite a while. My question relates to the annuities claim. I'm really concerned that council is planning to go to court on the proposed settlement agreement to seek a motion regarding a without prejudice clause that frankly is already in the agreement. And my concern is the risk that this brings to either stall or even worse to jeopardize the agreement, not only for Atikameksheng, but every other First Nation as well. And I want to know from council if this is something you are still planning on doing.
So Val, do you want to hear from every council member or?
No, I would just, that's not necessary. I mean, you work together, so it would be nice to hear from council because council is the one making the decision on this. So I'm just, I've made several calls now to council and to GMA. And I would like to know if you're still planning to do this, because I think you really jeopardize our agreement by going to court at this late stage. So it's an easy answer. I mean, an easy question, an easy answer. Is this still something you're doing?
So back a few months ago when we were presented with the settlement agreement and there was no protective language specific to Atikameksheng, council and myself, we discussed it and direction was given to proceed with asking a judge to or the court to make a motion to determine or to address the overlap issue between our boundary claim and our annuities claim. If the chiefs and trustees and the RHT lawyers would not pursue more aggressively with Canada Ontario's legal counsel in the annuities claim to include that language. So at the August 31st meeting with the chiefs and trustees, myself and council were there. We presented a motion to all the chiefs and trustees to again ask the lawyers to be more aggressive with Canada and Ontario's lawyers to get that protective language in the settlement agreement. We only had one community support us, that was Garden River First Nation, and so our motion was defeated. So that said, the next step is for us to ask a court to make a decision or to address not only our request, but the legal counsel for Canada that brought up this concern at our case management conference in November of 2021, when our boundary claim was reinstated. There's a specific clause in that endorsement, that order, that says the Attorney General of Canada wants a motion to address the overlap issue. So yes, we are going to proceed because we feel that we deserve to have our own protective language in that agreement. There's protective language in there that protects Temagami. There's even a side agreement that protects Robinson Superior in a similar overlapping territory issue. So yes, we are going to proceed with this.
I would like to add something there. So you talk about this other motions judge in November 2021, but that's prior to the mediation that we heard Dave tell us about at our August 18th meeting here. He told us that there was a mediation specifically where this was the major issue, and it was mediated by former Chief Justice George Strathy of the Ontario Court of Appeal and Justice Harry Laforme, and that there was a without prejudice clause that was developed. Gama, you read me that clause. That's a sound clause. And Dave is our lawyer. He's our lawyer on the annuities claim. He assured us that that clause makes our boundary claim without prejudice to any other claim of any other First Nation. And that was his opinion as our lawyer. It was also the opinion that was confirmed by Chief Justice Court of Appeal and Harry Laforme. And the reason that Temagami and Robinson Superior need certain protocols because they're not protected. They're not parties to our agreement. They're not protected by our settlement agreement. This without prejudice clause does not apply to them. They need a separate agreement for that reason. So we should not be comparing ourselves to an external body. We have a without prejudice clause. You happen to think that it's not strong enough, and we have lawyers on our team that think it is. And I encourage counsel and to sit down and meet with our lawyers, because our lawyers on the annuity claim, that's Dave Naugabo and Diane Corbière, and counsel is the one that has to make this decision, not Gima. And counsel, you need to hear from our lawyer on this before you make that decision, because you threaten this agreement, not only for Atikameksheng, but for everybody. I don't understand why you don't see the importance of this. You really have to make this decision very carefully. You're wading in very dangerous territory.
So can I, I didn't even get a chance to finish there. I'll just finish. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So Valerie, we've already met with the lawyers in April. And we talked about the protection clause. And again, we know that they went to mediation with I forget the one judge's name, but also Harry Laforme. But we also met with Harry Laforme after the mediation as well. And we presented our language to him. And he also said, well, there's nothing wrong with your language either. Right? So we also have the same mediator saying, well, there's nothing wrong with the Atikameksheng's language and their request as well. He was right there with Dave Naugabo, Roger Jones, Stephen O'Neill, and our lawyers. So when we presented our side, they said, well, there's nothing wrong with the Atikameksheng's language. Why aren't you including that? That was his comment as well. So there is a motion, and the position is that if the courts decide the without prejudice clause is acceptable, then we've already agreed that we're going to sign the agreement.
Do you really think that going before a judge and asking him to do a different without prejudice clause when it's already in the agreement, And the first thing the judge is going to ask is if you have other First Nations agreement on this. And in fact, what you have is a motion of them turning you down on it. So you have no agreement from the other 19 communities. You have no agreement from Ontario and Canada. You're not going to be successful on that motion. And Ontario and Canada is going to say, we had a mediation and we have without prejudice language already in the agreement.
Well, we've discussed this already as a council, and we've discussed this with our lawyers. We've asked many times to meet with Dave after our latest meeting, which was in June, and we've been declined. And
So
you
you're
know,
saying that Dave will not meet with you on this issue?
no, he won't. He didn't even want to talk to us. We've been asking him since June 22nd because he was supposed to go back to Canada and Ontario, and he said, okay, I'll get to it when I can.
Have you told them that you're about to blow up this agreement with a motion going to court?
I don't think this is blowing up this agreement.
You're taking a very big risk, and I would encourage you to reach out to Dave to tell him that you're proposing this motion and you would like to meet with him.
Do you know what Dave's response was? Do what you got to do. That's his response. We've been trying for the last 2.5 years to get this done outside of the courts. I don't know how much more we can, do and appeal to them when they're totally ignoring us.
I heard from Dave. I sat in our community meeting on August 18th, and I heard him say that as our lawyer, he stood behind the without prejudice clause that is in that agreement. And you read it to me. I've seen it. That is a strong without prejudice clause. And I don't know why you wouldn't sit down with him to keep the discussion going. I don't know why you would go back to court and try to get different language in the agreement. If you open up the agreement at this late stage, you're really risking the agreement. That's all Canada needs, is to say the First Nations wouldn't agree with each other, and now we're not moving forward. You're giving them a nice excuse to kill this deal.
Gima, if I could just step in for just a moment. Thank you, Valerie, for bringing this discussion forward, because it is an important discussion and it's something that's all on our minds. I do want to go to Barry because Barry does have a question that's related to this. And then I do need us to move on, because the spirit of this is also where we are supposed to be talking about 22-23, and we are making note of these discussions. And we can have further discussion about this, but I do want to there's a lot of questions online. We are quite over time. So Barry, if we can just go over to Barry, I know you had a question that was related to this.
So my question is, it actually raises a lot. So now actually raises a lot of questions for me, a lot of concerns that I think I share with a lot of people. Council decision to go to court, both the wording to protect our own things, what I got. Did the RST lawyer send a letter to council and the chief that both the prejudice clause that is protected, that are longer claim will not be affected? That's what I heard about the 18th presentation. I know that one of the presentations we had on the 31st, it was hard for me to hear because it was I don't know what was said, but did the RSP submit a letter to council assuring that council that yes, and our thing will not be affected by that? You say no, chief. So no letter was submitted? No. Okay.
Just to be clear, for everyone online, the question was if there was a letter sent to the council, specifically stating regarding the non price
Clause, if they had received a letter in regards to that, and Gamal's response was no.
council about the situation, about that. So I'm not 100% sure if that's correct or not. If you're saying there wasn't one, then there wasn't one. But I think if we venture down this road, and if council decision, I hope council that consulting with the community, just in terms of what the jeopardy would be if we venture there and jeopardize the whole meeting. Not only affects our community, it affects other 20 other communities. That agreement gets squashed, then we're back to square one getting nothing. So this will impact a lot, and I know where I think the council is, but I don't think this is where you're going, that's trying to protect our property. But you got to remember that annuities claim, that's from past days. That's what that agreement is about. Yeah, we have our fight for a boundary claim, we would be one for a boundary claim. That's past annuities that preserving all the members, not only in our community, but the other 20 communities. So if this jeopardizes that, heaven forbid. You know, I don't want to go around saying I'm from the Atikameksheng and get whatever thrown at you or slurs thrown at because you disagreement. I don't want that. I don't want to have to defend myself for something like that. And I don't think council is making a right decision. I honestly don't believe that. And I think I'm very disappointed that you haven't consulted the community whatsoever to make this decision on your own.
So that's part of the whole.
City is that we were basically given a gag order on the whole annuities claim, right? Council was not able to share anything. And in terms of the settlement agreement, council I wasn't even provided a copy of the agreement when there was a vote on it with the chiefs and trustees.
Can I say, can you hear me? Because I think that's ridiculous. Stick to the issue. We're talking about the without prejudice clause. You can have a lot of complaints about the process, but you're confusing people. They don't understand what you're saying, Gama. Like you're trying to pull in all these other issues that, yes, they're important, but has nothing to do with you're going to court on the without prejudice clause. Those are side issues, and you're causing a distraction from the main focus, which is that without prejudice clause.
Miigwech Valerie, just for time's sake, because we are at 7:45, I think it's very valid and important that it's addressed. And so Ashley and Sierra have been making notes about the comments and questions this evening. And Gimon Council, if what we can do is provide a more robust answer in written form, so we can go away and actually provide that substance.
Actually, what I want to do is that we want to hold another session with the community. Yeah.
About this, the thing you need to get community members, give them the information, the correct information, what the impacts are going to be. Have our lawyers sit there if we have to. We're paid for them, for God's sakes. Have them come here and answer our questions. How is this going to affect us as community members in regards to the annuities plan? Are we going to be left out? Are we going to be shut out? Are we going to be left out or shut out? Those are hard questions we need to ask somebody and get some real answers about it. Please.
So, yes, I do want to do that, and I do want to have another session. We are having another chiefs and trustees meeting on October 16th. So I wanted to bring forward.
Because I have questions too, like there's other questions related to the annuities claim. But I also wanted to say though, that Canada has already told us that they're going to use the annuities claim against us when it comes time to talking about compensation for the boundary claim. Right. And so if Dave is saying, okay, you're not going to be affected, but Canada is already saying, well, no, you will be, because we're going to be going after you. So yes, we do have a letter. Yes, we do have a letter. But like I said, we've been not only communicating within the RHT legal counsel for, with our own legal counsel and then Canada and Ontario, but we've also been communicating, with Canada, Ontario, their legal counsel in our boundary claim. So they're talking, right? They're saying, well, if we're gonna give Atikameksheng this amount under the annuities claim, well, we're gonna subtract that from whatever they're gonna give them in the boundary claim. So those are things to consider too. And that, you're right. This could potentially affect others, but we know for a fact we're getting impacted no matter what by the annuities claim settlement, right? So I'm trying to get the protection for Atikameksheng. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
You're trying to, I see you're trying to protect our interest in all this. But you have to look at the broader picture. In terms of how this affects the other community members.
Well, the other thing too is this could potentially impact the go forward calculations as well.
Right. So yes, we're trying to consider all of this, right? And again, it would have been better if Dave and his team worked with us right from the start, and they didn't. They just led us along for 18 months. So I don't really know what else to say. Like, what other avenue do we have? Do we just say, okay, we'll just take whatever you give us? And no, I don't think. I still think there's opportunity for us to get that protection. And but again, we'll have another conversation with the community once we get a little bit more information. So, we can have that bigger discussion. We can talk about the other ramifications to the other communities. But I do know, regardless of what happens, we're the ones that are going to be the most impacted and the most negatively impacted. I do know that because we're the ones that have contributed the most to the annuity settlement. And we will still continue. But we're the ones that are going to be the ones most negatively impacted by this as well. Right? Because all of the mining that's land we're not going to get back. That's land that, that activity is creating negative impacts for our members and will forever pretty much. So why aren't we getting a fair share out of this? Why are we the ones that have to, again, accommodate everybody else? Right?
We really need to talk because you're talking about a land claim and this is an annuities claim. They're two different things and people don't understand that and you're mixing it up.
Well,
and people really need to understand the difference.
All due respect, Val, you tell that to Canada, Ontario, because they're telling us they're going to use it against us. That's all I'm saying.
What they're saying is that we can't claim from them twice in a double recovery clause. So when this boundary claim is finally agreed to and gone through court, we've been through the timber claim since 1997. They agreed with us that they breached our rights and we still haven't seen a penny. They're going to fight us tooth and nail on that boundary claim and we're just starting to collect evidence. So when we get through that land claim process, if they want to argue with us after we've won and we are going to win, then they're going to talk about that in the assessment of damages. But this is an annuity claim. The Crown doesn't get a defense by saying we screwed you out of your land and so now we don't have to pay you the annuities. They owe us for an annuity claim and they owe us on the land claim. Those are two different things. We need to have a bigger discussion because I don't appreciate the flippant comments that are happening right now. And I don't like having to defend, but we need our lawyers in the room to answer our questions.
Valerie, I think we can all agree that this needs more time and separate from what we're doing right now. I think we can all agree to that. And so I think we're committed. We're going to go back from this. We're going to find a time that works for us and that we can all get together and have these important conversations. Okay, so that's been noted. I would like to move on and give opportunity to other members that do have questions And I think we're going to try to limit the few. If there are more questions after these next few, I still want them. You can go back to Ashley and Sierra and submit to them. Sean has a running tally of questions, and we will still answer all those questions within the next weeks and put it out to the community. All right, so if we can just go to the next question that was online, Sean. That one. Is there anybody else in the room that has questions? And you know what, and that's okay. Like, I'm glad that we were able to sit here and have that conversation. It's tough. It's important to us, right? And so we'll make sure that we have more time allocated to specifically have that conversation. Okay? Any other questions? Any questions for our numbers guru here? You told the story.
It was a great story this year.
All right.
Yep.
All right, so that concludes the Q&A portion. Thank you so much, Tony, for being here. You just make numbers seem so easy. Alrighty, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get to the fun stuff now. We really got some great prizes. Like, I'm really sad I can't be at the draw. So just so you know the rules is that you do have to be here or be online to be able to win. If you're online and you're not from the Sudbury area, we will get the prizes to you. Just so it's very, very clear, those up here on the panels are not eligible to be able to win. However, if staff members are here because they were not required to be here in working capacity and they are Deben Dazawag, they will be included in the raffle because they are members. All right. Okay, so what's the first prize? The first prize is the home movie theater set. So there's a projector, a bin of like snacks, and what else? And a screen. Okay, so that's what we are raffling off first. Who is our spinner here? Ashley? All right, Ashley, spin away.
Yeah.
Lori Ricci. Ooh, you get to watch a movie outside. All right, what's the next one?
Staff off duty.
There is a Ninja air fryer with a whole baking set basket. All right. Okay. That's Cheryl Borton. Yeah. All right, next one. A what? A hunting. I'm a berry picker. I am not a hunter. A hunting blind. There we go. A hunting blind. Who is it? Gina Pons. You're gonna go shoot a moose this weekend. What's the next thing? Hockey net. Hockey net. Here we go. Ryan Willis. They're just cleaning up. Holy. The last one is a ice hut. An ice hut. Here we go. Dan P or Don P? Dan P. Dan P. Seth.
If you can put your,
Yeah, yeah, we need to know who you are. Potatoes? Okay, well, Ashley's gonna figure it out. If Dan is an AI robot, we'll fit it when we're at the office and we'll let you know if someone else won. Potato goose, okay, Dan potato goose. That's it, eh? That is it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for your contribution.